Hello and welcome to the Kelcast, the Hearthstone Arena podcast, where we try to get better without cursing. I'm Keldar, a longtime Infinite Leaderboard Arena player and streamer on Twitch. Joining me as my co-host is another Arena Leaderboard player, Kellen Abel. If you want to find us on social media, remember you can search Keldar on Twitch, YouTube, or Twitter. That's Keludar. This is a very special edition of the Kelcast. This is the second round of the Grand Arena Tournament. It's an extra podcast for us. So, Kellen, what are we doing this week? I guess I kind of said what we're doing. Sorry.
Oh, we're doing the Grand Arena Tournament, baby. It's a round of 32. We got to cut it down to 16 because this weekend we've got a giant crew of big name arena players coming in hot with big old takes on what they think are the best cards to bring it down to 8 and then 4 and then 2 and then 1. But until then, it's up to you and me to determine which are the top 16 cards all time in the arena format.
And a very quick, I'm not going to go over the whole format again, but I'll give over a very brief thing. We started with 64 cards. We did the first round last week. If you missed that episode, you can sure go back and listen. But you also, if you want, I actually highly recommend you check the links below the podcast or on YouTube. There will be a link to the tournament bracket so you can follow along. It might be a little easier to kind of like follow what we're saying and where we are. So I highly recommend to check that out as you're listening if you have the ability to. Yeah, so this is going to be really fun. I'm really pumped. Last week was... Go ahead.
Yeah, well, so I was going to say last week you and Isherwood disagreed a lot, but you also came to similar conclusions. I think one of the things you and I do often, I think what makes us so good as co-op partners, is we disagree on how we get to a decision, but we end up at the same decision a lot. There was a Lewis Sacker novel where a kid knows how to count, but he counts like the wrong order. He'll count like 1, 8, 7, 4, but he always gets to the right number at the end, and the teacher doesn't understand how it works. I kind of feel like that's you and me doing arena decisions. We go all these different directions, but we always end up at a similar conclusion, or not always, but frequently. And so I'm really curious if that will translate to our decision making when it comes to this round of 32.
Yeah, so let's just get right to it. Like I said, real quick, on Saturday, 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific, we will have Dreads, Merps, and ADWCTA from the Grinning Goat joining us. So there will be a 5-person panel. We will make all of our votes and then basically majority rules. In this format, we're probably going to just kind of go with it. And if we absolutely have to, we do have people that are voting. You can actually vote on these brackets if you would like to, but that's pretty much it. So let's get right to it. First, we got Abyssal Enforcer versus Puzzlebox Saran. So this is I don't think this one is particularly close.
Yeah, I don't either.
Yeah, but...
Oh, did you guys mention what the cards did, or are these so widely known cards that we are expecting? I don't remember how you guys
We did in the first episode. I don't know if we're going to need to for this now.
Cool. Yeah. Gotcha.
So yeah, Puzzlebox beat out Light Bomb, which was close, and that was actually one of the more interesting discussions, frankly.
Yeah.
So
I think this is Abyssal Enforcer without too much difficulty. I think it warped a whole world around it, and it was one of the first cards that got micro adjusted as a result, or banned from Arena. This was back in the Victor and / 12 wins days where he was blasting through Arena, and there was so much conversation on podcasts all over the place about the power of Abyssal Enforcer and how it was basically like a Flame Strike plus a 6/6 and 6/6 and all this other stuff. And I think Puzzlebox was an amazing card in its era, and it changed how you built your decks to beat mages and how you played around and against them. But I think Abyssal Enforcer, just its impact on how we play Hearthstone today because of the banning, I think had a greater effect overall on the format. And I think Abyssal Enforcer wins because of its importance to the history of Hearthstone's, arena management.
Yeah. If we're going to compare them, I would say that Abyssal Enforcer we're rating cards based on their power level at the time they came in, at their meta impact on the time they came into the meta, and also their how much you remember them and that kind of thing. So those are the three kind of like factors, their wow factor and everything. But I mean, Abyssal Enforcer was a finisher. It was a board clear. It was a tempo play. It just did everything, and it did it before Puzzlebox would. And Puzzlebox was very unique and frankly does something on the list that no other card in this whole list does, which is one of the reasons it made it one round. But yeah, it's getting knocked out. See ya. On to the next one. So
Abyssal Enforcer was so important to me that I remember where I was when I read the news that it was being banned. That's how much I remember. I remember.
Wait, it didn't get banned, did it?
I don't remember if it got banned or micro adjusted.
Oh, I think it was one of the ones that got with Flame Strike that got a 50% nerf.
That's what it was. That's what it was. It was the first introduction of micro adjustments. That's what it was. And I remember where I was when I heard that news, which is a crazy thing to think about. That's more important to me than real world political events.
Yeah.
But there we are.
Yeah, here we are. Oh, I forgot to bring that up. That's okay. All right, so moving on, we have Norsy Kraken. This was another Merps rage against Silver Sword. These are two really cool cards. I mean, Norsy Kraken was one of the first. It was like a really good neutral finisher. Was very, very strong late game. Was it one of the first 9-drops that really had an impact?
So actually, it was more important, in my opinion, more important than that. It was one of the first expensive cards that had an impact. Because up till that point, expensive cards just could not really be played. They were just too expensive. People were they were used to Gadget Zan and or Gnomes versus Goblins, I mean, where things cost 1 and 2 mana, and if you didn't rush people down to the ground, you were going to get crushed by Muster for Battle or cards like it, Implosion, whatever. So Norsy Kraken was the first time it really felt like you could go just play a 9-drop and it was totally fine. Up until that point, the only thing that slowed things down were taunt minions, which was a good thing. But man, Norsy Kraken really took you for a ride on what a powerful 9-drop's supposed to look like.
Yeah, and on top of that, one thing to mention about the meta at the time was that if you guys think of the meta now, there are so many huge taunts that are after 6 mana, 7 mana. You know, this was before all of that. This was even before like Bog Creeper and that kind of stuff. So this card existed when there was a couple like maybe mid-range taunts, like, you know, like there was Senjins and there was some other cards, but like there wasn't like these huge taunts that really got in its way. So when this thing came down, and also remember there was not rush minions, so there was no way to just like be, oh, I just double fishy flyer this and they lose. Like it just doesn't, it didn't exist. So it was a different time. But at the Silver Sword just did something that it's just power level was just so much greater. I think I would go for Silver Sword here.
So it's really a tough call because Norsy Kraken revolutionized the concept of a late game, but Silver Sword took that new concept of late game and made it so that any deck could have a late game. You could be an aggressive deck, you wanted Silver Sword. You could be a slower deck, guess what? You still wanted Silver Sword. I think overall Silver Sword was the more powerful card, and its effect on drafting weapon removal is the reason I think Silver Sword is important. I significantly overvalued Acidic Swamp Ooze, or what is the 3 mana 4/3 that removed 1 charge? Even that card was so much more important to me.
Right, I know what you're talking about, yeah.
It's another ooze, I can't remember.
Toxic Sewer Ooze, I believe.
Toxic Sewer Ooze, that sounds right. So while I think Norsy Kraken changed how we look at the game, I think there's a lot of cards that that could kind of, I don't know. I think Silver Sword's power level just is above Norsy Kraken.
Yeah. I actually was always amazed by this card that you legitimately could be fighting for the board and your Silver Sword could basically be like the only thing that would basically kill a minion. You wouldn't even have any minions. Like you would just swing once. But then the following turn with that on your, you know, being able to play 9 mana of stuff with it was just like that was all you needed. So it was really interesting how you didn't have to be like, obviously if you were really far ahead and you played this, it was just like beyond over. It was like almost like a mini Arbor Up of just like you just buff the board so much there's no way to deal with it, you know. But even if you didn't, even in cases where you weren't ahead, this card still still mattered. So I'm
down for Silver Sword. Yeah,
I think we can agree on that one.
Speaking of Arbor Up,
what do we got next? We got Arbor Up. Yes. We have Arbor Up again. Oh, this is really interesting.
It's a close one.
I have to say on a side note that I was really disappointed with some of the matchups, like Potion of Madness versus Defile. It was really hard for certain cards to it was randomly seeded if you didn't catch the first episode. So these are just completely random.
I have an idea for that, by the way. I think next time.
Oh, sure.
Next time we do this, we won't do it the same way. It'll be smaller subsets and things like that. I think next time we compile the list and then we have people vote on them like we did after we made the bracket, and we seed them based on votes. I think that's how we do it next time. Yeah.
I definitely thought about letting them vote to have like the community to have a vote in the tournament, like be a deciding vote kind of thing. That would only work though if we got a decent amount of votes. We were getting like 15, 20 votes, but for the side of our podcast is not nothing. But if we could get like over 100 votes, that could be really interesting if we kept growing. So, but anyway, we got 2 druid cards, both completely huge meta warping cards. In fact, they really are the druid cards of their era for sure. I mean, Arbor Up is current, obviously. UI was we just talked about Norsy Kraken, which was one of the first really effective, expensive cards. I would argue that this is one of pretty much the first ever card that was a 10 mana spell. I mean, usually and they started to work on creating expensive spells beyond UI after this. Like, what's the one that makes the 2 water elementals?
Deep Freeze.
Yeah, Deep Freeze.
That's exactly what came to mind for me too.
Power of Creation. So there's lots of there's a lot of they took this card. This was like I feel like this is a card that was like they proved a big value spell could work in the game, and they definitely have continued to create big ones. They have Survival of the Fittest now. They just have a lot of them. But needless to say though, Arbor Up is just the power. Like, we can take the metas and the power levels and time periods, but I still don't think UI can really match up with Arbor Up.
That's funny. I would say the opposite. I think Arbor Up is a card that is incredible and works specifically well in this current meta. Its overall power level, like if UI came back, I would take Arbor Up over it. But in the era that UI existed, there were multiple like a lot of people talking about, do I keep UI in my opening hand? Is it good enough? Am I so much more likely to win the game if I cast Ultimate Infestation that I would keep a 10 mana spell in my opening hand? And I'm not saying like people were talking about this and they were wrong. There was real legitimate conversation because the win rate of having Ultimate Infestation was so darn high.
Yeah, I mean, it was my best leaderboard run I had. It was my highest. I don't know if it was my highest average, but it was my best finish. And I had 16 druid runs, I think, in that 30. And I proved that whole run I did exactly what you're saying. I held UI in my opening hand, except I did have a rule. It was if I only had one, I didn't keep it. But if I had 2 UIs, I kept. Or sorry, if I only had one, then I kept it. And if I didn't, then I didn't. But yeah,
I followed the same rule. So I actually think that means UI is the better card in its meta, because Arbor Up right now, you win the game instantly, so it feels OP if you play it as soon as you have a 2 or 3 mana. If you have 2 creatures on board, you win the game. I sent you a screenshot 2 days ago of a turn 5 Arbor Up win. So I understand how good Arbor Up can be. But there's also situations where you have Arbor Up and they just have an AoE spell or something to stop you from doing it. And at that point, I mean, I don't know, now it's an even board state again because we live in the world of board clears and rush minions. Where, I don't know, I feel like if you cast Ultimate Infestation 4 years ago, you won the game every time.
So...
this is a split vote, isn't it?
Well, this is where they were wanting a rubric. Depends on how we want to like point spread it in a sense. I do agree that it had a bigger meta impact. But I think that the power level of Arbor Up was probably stronger in its time period, which is now. But so it's kind of close. I think that's wrong though. I don't think Arbor Up is more powerful in its current meta. You would keep Ultimate Infestation in your opening hand because it was so powerful that if you cast it on turn 10, you won. Where Arbor Up is only powerful if you cast it on turn 5. Or, I mean, it's also powerful later. That's not fair to say, but its most powerful thing was that you could play it from that you could just play Arbor Up. Sorry, I lost track of where we were. That's okay.
But I just feel like Arbor Up, its overall power level is better, but in the current format, the power level is so much higher that I don't think Arbor Up is as powerful in the current meta as Ultimate Infestation was in its meta. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. This is tough. How do we decide when we split like this? What do we do? Do we flip a coin? That sounds awful.
We could say what the votes were for the people's votes.
What were the people's votes? What'd they go with?
They were 70-30 with Arbor Up.
Dang it. All right. Arbor Up moves on.
I don't know what else to do in terms of...
that's perfect. That's a good tiebreaker. That's exactly what we should do.
Oh, boy.
What's next? We're on to the next round.
Oh, this actually might be I think this might be the most difficult bracket in this round. Unless I'm missing another one, but I think this might be it. So we have...
Well, I actually think we're both going to come up with the same answer here, even though I wish they weren't paired against each other. Then this is Firelands Portal versus Muster for Battle.
Yeah.
I have to tell you, I am one of the biggest Muster for Battle fans of all time. And that means not as a person who enjoyed playing in the metas with Muster for Battle, but in terms of its overall power level. However, I think Firelands Portal is a card, not because it was necessarily better than Muster in its own era, but Firelands Portal changed how everyone felt about Hearthstone. And I think that means more to the game than Muster did. How do you feel about it?
It's so hard. Because
this
is one of those ones where we set ourselves up for this by the way we designed this. Because Muster was just... I mean, they were both meta shattering, but Muster like changed everything about that meta with GVG and everything.
Yep.
But I actually...
Well, no. It fit perfectly into that meta because that meta was so aggressive and Muster was the best aggressive card.
Right.
Right? And it was the best at beating other aggressive starts. So
yeah.
It was... God, it was so good in its world. Absolutely true.
Yeah.
I just feel like Firelands Portal and its and the way people started talking about Hearthstone during that Portal period, the RNG conversations and the variance is not cool and this is too wild and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I felt like that outside stuff, not necessarily its direct impact. While I feel like they had similar impacts on the meta, maybe Muster edges ahead. I thought the real world conversations put Portal ahead, but I'm not sure. How do you feel? I vote for Portal personally.
I think I actually lean. I was trying to give Muster some credit. I think I lean Portal, but it's really hard. This close. When I saw this, even there were some close ones in the first round, but man, I don't know. This might be the closest that I've seen. They should be getting technically as long as there weren't any really weird bracket matchups, they should get harder every round to some degree. I do think that Firelands Portal just was such a meta breaker that we just have to. I think it has to move on. So I agree.
Man, it's tough. This reminds me of the Potion of Madness Defile decision. I hate this.
I do
love
too,
it, but I also hate it.
I'm sure we're gonna get flack for it, and it's okay. It's fine.
Good.
Oh, interesting. It is interesting though. The crowd went for Muster for Battle by a lot.
Really? Mm-hmm. Interesting. Fascinating.
Well, they don't get to make the decision, so.
Not when we agree.
All right.
What's next?
We got Og Merchants versus Primordial Drake. Wow.
Oh man, how is it another hard one already? Shoot.
They're all pretty hard coming up. Yeah, they're all pretty hard.
I gotta go. Ooh. Okay, so Og Merchants affect how you draft your deck. Primordial Drake affects how you play the game and draft your deck. I mean, Og Merchants does too. They both affect everything. They both affected their worlds so heavily. Shoot.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, for sure, Primordial Drake's meta impact is more obvious, is I guess the best way to explain it. We talked about this in the power of ping. Ping is something that is not, it's not something you remember very much. It just is part of the game. Like, oh, you're just removing a little here, removing a little there. Like, you don't think about very rarely is there going to be a time where that ping is going to basically save you from dying or something that much, where it's like, that game was like, oh man, if I didn't have that ping that game, that Og Merchant, I would have died.
Yeah.
You don't think of it that way too much.
Yeah, so I have to look at the win rates a little bit, and Og Merchants have been in the top percentage of win rate commons ever since their release. Just continuously overperforming people's expectations. Always doing fantastically. Primordial Drake was great. It was so good was that it was discoverable in that era.
Mm-hmm.
It was in that first era of discovers where you could find things like Primordial Drake, and it was there were some classes where you could discover it more often. I think I got to go with Og Merchants. I think that you really did not ever draft 2/1s in the first couple sets when Og Merchants are around. I still avoid 1-mana 2/1s, and I used to love 1-mana 2/1s. Yeah. The only thing that I would say is in Primordial Drake's favor is that you could cast it, and then it wasn't just like how it affected how your opponent played into it. They couldn't play around it very well because their best case scenario was that you get a 4/8 taunt, and then they could beat you with that because it was so big at the time. A 4/8 was such a hard card to kill.
Yeah, it was. I mean, well, at the time it was a closer. Like it was. I talked about this in the first round, but you would clear their board, and like the way the game was then, card advantage mattered.
Yeah,
and that was basically removing sometimes 5 of their cards for 1, and that was just like they didn't have a way to recover cards at that point, unless they were very lucky to be a class that's just so happened to have card draw in their hand or something like, or they just had the perfect removal, which also could, that could definitely happen. But even so, they're spending a decent amount of mana. I honestly,
I still think I got to go with Og Merchants just because of how you draft decks because of their existence. But I do think individually Primordial Drake. I think if Primordial Drake was up against a single Og Merchant, it would be different. But I would choose the Drake. But because Og Merchants are in a group, I think just the fact that they exist and change how we choose cards before we even get to play a game, I think that means I would choose Og Merchants. What about you?
I mean, based on the fact that like it's meta impact and it's power level, I think I would actually go Drake. It's close though.
Okay. What say the people?
The people say, well, I can tell you what the people are gonna say probably just because I know what people think.
I think the people say Drake.
Yeah, they do.
Okay. All right, fair enough.
That's fair. I hate to give up on the Og Merchants, but yeah, it's.
Oh, I understand. I completely understand that. I do believe it's extremely close. I would take Og Merchants, but I do think it's very close. That's a real hard choice.
Oh, this is really interesting that these weren't. So the next we have Sword Eater versus Outriders Axe. It's like 2 of the most crazy 4-mana things that Warriors ever done up against each other.
Yeah. This is I think this is tough. I'd go with Sword Eater. I think it affected how you played the game more than Outriders Axe. Outriders Axe feels like there's not really much you can do against it, so you kind of just play it, and but you can beat Outriders Axe with tempo. You can't beat Sword Eater with tempo. So I like Sword Eater for that reason.
Yeah.
Outriders Axe I think is amazing. Don't get me wrong. I think it's one of the best warrior cards ever printed. But I think the fact that Sword Eater both plays defense and offense at the same time while providing you card advantage is it existed in a world where card advantage was easy to come by. So the fact that Outriders Axe gives you card advantage in its own world and self-sustains is wonderful, but Sword Eater lived in a world where that didn't matter so much. So I like Sword Eater. Where are you at on this one?
I don't know.
And here I was thinking we'd agree all the time.
Well, no, I agree with a lot of your points. The thing is, so they both do different things, but I will say that generally Sword Eater can win a game on the turn it's played more often than Outriders Axe can win on the turn it's played. I mean, there is ways where if your opponent has a slow enough deck and you play Axe, you get enough card draw that actually does mean you win because you played it on 4. But generally, board state wise, like you play that, you kill their like 2 or 3 drop. They usually don't have any way to get through to the rest of your minions, and then you have another swing of the weapon. It's just, yeah. I really don't know if I can give up on Axe, but I can kind of see the Sword Eater thing. I don't know. I'm like so torn here.
Well, let's listen to the. So I'm on Sword Eater because its instantaneous board effect is huge, and in its world not everybody had nearly. Warrior was in a world where it needed ways to get tempo because they had so much card draw. This was Omega Assembly era. This was all that kind of stuff. So I don't know. I think personally that the tempo swing from Sword Eater compensates for the card draw from Outriders Axe.
No, it definitely creates card. It in a sense, the value wise, it sort of does the same thing if you look at it in terms of that, and I agree. I guess I'm gonna go Sword Eater. It's really close though.
It is close. I love how close these are getting. I actually think the next one isn't though, but we'll talk about that, I'm sure.
Oh gosh, I'm not. I feel like I know which way you're gonna go, and I feel like we're gonna disagree on this one. We'll see. We'll see. I might be wrong. I might be wrong. All right, so next we got Coilfang Warlord versus Stonehill Defender. So this is gonna be a matter of how much we want to actually allow for meta impact to matter. Because I mean, power level wise, I don't. This is literally one of the strongest cards ever made.
Coilfang Warlord.
Yeah, because the thing about the difference between Warlord and Defender, in certain respects, is that Defender can definitely win you games. Like, don't get me wrong, it for sure can. But the thing is, it also can miss. It has an ability to miss. It's really hard for Coilfang Warlord not to do enough to win. Like, or to do. It is true that it can do nothing. Like, it is possible that you can actually have a situation where you can't kill it off and like you're behind, and like it does happen. So I don't want to like
happened against me recently. Yes, it
so
does.
I don't want to be like, I don't want to lie, but it is pretty hard. So
it's very hard. Coilfang Warlord is a good card, but it's a good card because it costs so very much mana. I think Stonehill Defender has the ability to allow you to spend more mana overall, and play cards that are on the same power level as Coilfang Warlord. So, and again, I'm going to go back to the spot where in its meta, Stonehill Defender could discover cards we love, like Primordial Drake, like Tyrian Fordring, like Sunkeeper Tarim. And obviously, it was best in Paladin. That was where it was absolutely best. It also could discover Serenite Chain Gang. And in its worst case scenario, back when it was first printed, was something like Infested Tauren, which isn't even a bad card because it lets you, in this situation, because it allows you to curve into other things. I actually think I would, in its original format, if I was given the option of Stonehill Defender in one of the classes where it's fine versus Coilfang Warlord, I think there's a good chance I would actually take the Stonehill Defender.
Yeah.
I'm a Stonehill Defender voter, by the way. I will definitely be voting for Stonehill Defender at the end of this conversation. I think the one thing that Coilfang Warlord has really going for it is that like 3-week period at the end of like 2 metas ago or 2 micro adjustments ago where something was clearly wrong with its offering rate, and everybody, I think there was an average of 1.8 per Demon Hunter deck or something. Yeah. Do you remember that?
Oh yeah, well it's happened sometimes when they do these when they undo adjustments or whatever the heck happens. It's happened when the last couple of metas. There's been this period where Demon Hunter was like 56 to like 60 something % for the first couple of weeks till they microed, and this is the same things happened each time. So
yep. Yeah, so I'm voting for Stonehill Defender because I think the opportunities to gain advantage were greater than Coilfang Warlords, and they came earlier and allowed you to build a game plan. While Coilfang Warlord is an incredible card on the turn you play it, I think, and the subsequent turns, I think it comes late enough in the game that sometimes you're not given an opportunity to cast it, and in the games where you can cast it, you might be in a situation. It's late enough in the game that you could be in a card advantage situation where your opponent is so far ahead that on cards that its instant board value might not be equivalent to a game win. So I'm voting for Stonehill Defender. Where are you at?
Oh man, I'm gonna go with Coilfang, but it's close.
Oh man, what do the people say?
They say Coilfang. I did.
Really?
Check. Yeah.
That blows my mind. How do they think that?
Well.
Oh, okay. All right. It is recent. It is recent. I get that.
Yeah.
I can't believe that.
I think this next one's a little more less crazy. Like these two cards are ones that got a little lucky with their matchups a little bit more, I think.
Oh yeah.
So next we've got Fiery Warax, remember, at 2 mana. And we have Faceless Corruptor before it was nerfed as a 5 mana 5/4. Wow.
So I'm on Faceless Corruptor here, but it's because of one very simple reason. Warax at 2 mana was the only thing saving Warrior from completely being an awful, absolutely garbage class.
Yeah.
But even with Warax, Warrior was still not good. I think the only reason that that Warrior became reasonable was because they started printing actual good Warrior cards, and at that point, Fiery Warax had to go down to up to 3 mana because it was way too powerful in a good class. But because it didn't cost 2 mana ever when Warrior was good. I'm sorry, 3 mana ever when Warrior was... Wait, yes. 2 mana when Warrior was good.
Yeah.
I think I would vote for Faceless Corruptor because I'm trying to remember a time I took a card over Faceless Corruptor in any class, and I can't remember one.
Yeah. Again, my bias of just loving token style and like every class I can make it work in makes me just love this card.
Oh, yeah.
Because like I love those like Grim Necromancer cards, you know, anything that's like here, put a little like, I don't even mind the little 3 mana 2/3s that summon a 1/1. Like, give me a little spread. I'm okay with that, you know? So, yeah, but that being said, Faceless Corruptor was definitely one of those power spike cards that really, I think it started to really push Rush into a different direction, which is maybe not the best. I've argued before that I don't exactly love. Actually, Dreads really doesn't have a problem with the way Rush is. I don't like Rush with so much like death rattles and just extra things on top of because what Rush is already like, you know, great, but there's just like, you know, Claw Machine, like stuff like that is just too much. You know, I don't mind like a Divine Shield thing here and there where it like sticks on the board. That's okay. Fishy Flyer's okay because it costs so much, but like there's just certain things I don't really love. But needless to say, I'm just going to go with Corruptor. I'm not going to give a long explanation, but Corruptor I think is just a better card. I didn't really play with Warax at 2 mana, so I don't really have a great barometer for it, so I think we'll just go with Corruptor.
It was like a life vest that was trying to save a drowning class from utter destruction.
Oh man, Edwacht he's gonna revolt. Faceless Corruptor, actually the vote was for Fiery Warax by a decent amount, but really? 70-30. It looks like there was 10 people that voted or something. So
still, I'm surprised. Okay.
All right, so next we've got, this is pretty interesting. I like this one, but I'm pretty set on this one myself. But so we have expendable performers versus conjurers calling.
Yeah.
You know, yeah. So expendable performers is definitely, it's hard to say, like, it's crazy they got matched up like this, but that card definitely, they started making cards that summon 1/1s and then like, but like the fact that this, as long as they die, which frankly isn't that hard to pull off, you just kind of wait till you do get it so you get the value. And it's basically, it's pretty hard to not get a complete board flip with this card. And sometimes you even have 3 or 4 1/1s left over. So I'm going to say first that card is just crazy. It's really good. It's really crazy, but I can't, Conjurer's Calling 3 mana, like, it's just no question to me. It's better.
I agree. I think Expendable Performers is fantastic, obviously, and every time you cast it, you probably win the game. But unfortunately, with Expendable Performers, you just didn't have many opportunities to have it in your hand. It was just hit with the micro adjustment bat immediately. There weren't a ton of good ways to discover it easily when it was printed. Conjurer's Calling was a card that you drafted. It was easy to get into your deck. It was playable on everything, and it worked so early in the game because you could make one quick value trade on 3 or 4 mana, and you now had the board just forever because you got the board once. And I think the biggest problem with Conjurer's Calling and its existence is not that you could get the board with it, but that you could get the board 2 times. And then it even had the opportunity to do small little things like silence your opponent's taunt sometimes in some different ways. Not a great long-term plan. But if you have lethal, Conjurer's Calling was actually a removal spell too. So I think Conjurer's Calling had a bigger impact on how we played in the meta. And it was one of those cards where, like something like Fungalmancer, where if you were playing against a mage, you did not have a choice except to clear their board. Just no options.
Yeah, or you had the option of just, you have to push face and pray to gosh they don't get rush or charge or something, because like
Booty Bay Bodyguard was the one that always got me. I would push face when they had a 5-drop in play, and then they'd be like, oopsies, or 8 mana.
Yeah.
And now they have and they'd get 2 Booty Bay Bodyguards, and I'd be like,
all right, so it sounds like we're pushing conjurers forward. Sorry, and it looks like the crowd agrees with us in a sense. So we got Conjurer's Calling. And the thing was, I loved how you would draft around it, like cards that I wouldn't normally love taking, like the 8 mana 12/12 that can't attack Face Demon. Those were cards you would purposely take, cards that you knew they couldn't clear or you knew that they would ignore. That was the thing. Any minion that you knew they would ignore were cards that you drafted even before you get the conjurers. You would start taking cards like that to set up for it. It was a really, really crazy card, and I think it definitely has a chance to win, especially at 3 mana. All right, so next we've got
Oh.
Every time I see this card, I'm going to think of Merps now.
I think both of these cards should have lost their first rounds, so I love that they're here because this is a good conversation.
Oh yeah. So we got Venomous Scorpid versus Fire Plume Phoenix. So yeah,
I'm on Scorpid. I feel like Fire Plume Phoenix was amazing in its meta, and I mean it's still good, but in its meta it was incredible. It allowed elemental synergies to work. It cleared small minions. It was great against Gastropod. It was just a good card. It was a good way to ping off a Stone Skin Basilisk Divine Shield. But unfortunately, at the end of the day, it was a good value card that helped you win the game in a moderate way, where Venomous Scorpid gets Soul Mirror. And I really don't think you can, or Draconic Studies for Alexstrasza, or, Ysera, or whatever. Or if you're not even in the class, it gets Flame Strike, or Expendable Performers, which we were just talking about. So,
I've made this argument a million times. Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you. I've made this argument a million times with Scorpid, and it's what I'll keep saying. What makes it... Discover is great. Don't get me wrong. Discover is a really strong mechanic. But what really makes it great is that you can be in situations where you need a removal and you don't get it out of the Discover, but the card itself is a removal in general in a lot of situations. So sometimes you can even purposely not take a removal that you would discover because you have the Scorpion on board and you're comfortable with that. So you can take another value card. It just gives you... It's beyond flexible in so many different ways. So yeah, I think Scorpion wins by a landslide here. So
yeah, I agree. And it's so funny. It actually is really hard for me to vote for current cards because I feel like I'm experiencing recency bias. But man, I don't remember having the same feelings playing with or against Phoenix that I do with Scorpion.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, I was trying to make it fair with newer cards, but some of the power levels are just so crazy, Yeah. Next one's a really interesting one. Oh wait, why is this? Oh, I went up a little too high. Here we got Keeper of Aldemon versus Imprisoned Violfine. So, I would say that Imprisoned Violfine's, name to fame is it's probably the strongest curve 2 you can in the history of the game potentially. I mean, there's other cards that did a lot on 2, but like this is probably one of the strongest 2 drops ever. So I think it moving on to second round is admirable, but Keeper of Aldemon was just a game changer, and it was beyond. We talked about this last time. The flexibility of this card was just like bonkers. I don't think that the funny thing is, like, I want cards like Violfine to have a chance, which is why I put them in there to some degree. I want to represent not just the craziest powerful cards, but also the ones that impact the game. But I don't know what you want to say about these two, but I would say I would vote Keeper here.
I'd also vote Keeper. I think people often forget when they look back at Keeper that its most common use was turning a 1/1 into a 3/3.
Exactly.
And that means it's a 4-mana 5/6. That's very good. I mean, that's just good.
And it almost was, in some ways, if you think about it, a lot of times you would turn your 1/1 into a 3/3 and kill a 2/3. And it's almost like giving your minion Divine Shield too, because like you're basically, in the terms of the fact that you're like clearing their board, you're increasing your board state, and you're dropping another minion. Like it was one of those early swings that just was like Coghammer or something. Just like, what do you do? It's over. And
think of a card like Silvermoon Portal that does the same thing but provides you with a crappier minion on the side than a 3/4. Yeah. Like I in an era where Silvermoon Portal would have been extremely overpowered, and the Keeper of Aldemon is even better than that. So I mean, I remember sitting on a ferry listening to Merps and ADWCTA talk about how frustrated they were with Keeper of Aldemon for a good 15 minutes on one of their pods. Like it just made people not, I don't know. It was too good for the time. It was way too good for its era. Vile Fiend is a very good card in the current era and ever since it came out, but it's not too good for the world we live in. It's just very good. And I think Keeper of Aldemon breaks that barrier and gets to the next level.
All right. That one was agreed upon by the voters out there that have been voting. Also, I want to say appreciate to the viewers and everyone that's been listening for voting and participating. That makes it really fun. So we'll try to keep making content that allows you to kind of participate in what we're doing.
Yeah, and if you want to vote, just check the podcast notes. There's a link to the tournament bracket, and you can just click on the link and start voting. It's very easy.
Yeah. So next we've got Imprisoned Ganarg versus Troublemaker. Interesting how we keep getting these like crazy druid card versus crazy druid card. Now like crazy warrior card versus. It's interesting how they keep lining up.
So I actually, so we even disagreed about Gnarg being in the tournament in itself. I think Gnarg is a good card, but I feel like it falls in the same vein as violfine does, where it's a great card that I love playing and I always want in my deck, but it's just good. It doesn't get to that next level that like I don't know, to something beyond that. I think it's a very, very good card, but it doesn't quite break that barrier. Where Troublemaker, I don't know, I think the number of wins you have with Warrior depends on if you have Troublemaker or not.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I can say in this discussion is I disagree with you on that it doesn't hit the next level, but that doesn't mean that I disagree with that point, but I do definitely think that Troublemaker is winning this. That's not... I mean, we all know what it does. We know I'm one of the only people in history. I have a YouTube clip of it where someone played a Troublemaker on turn 8, turn 9, and turn 10, and I won. I did it. But it's...
The fact that you made an entire YouTube video about doing that is, I think, a testament to the power level of Troublemaker. Ever since it came out, Warrior has been how many Troublemakers do I have? And that is a direct... correspondent to how many wins I get, and I think that's a telling story.
To give one last little kudo to Gnarg, I mean I forget the exact number, but it's one of the craziest one drop win rates there is. I mean it's really crazy. So like if you play that on one, like there's a lot of times where like especially if you're going first. If you're going first and you play that, like it's over a lot of times.
It's so hard to come back from that. It is. It does have its scenarios where it's very difficult to defeat.
Oh, Gnarg got an 80-20. They might not like this pick.
Really? That surprises me. I feel like it didn't shape the meta or have as powerful of an impact on the format as Troublemaker did. But I know everyone has their opinions, so
that's okay. I like juicy things because it's the best promotion, Kellen, is commotion. That's what I'm learning. And I'm creating tons of it. All right, here we go.
All right, Vilespine Slayer versus Twin Tyrant. Woo, that's another big hitter situation to be in.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, I think Vilespine Slayer is great. I think it's really strong. It definitely was meta impacting. The ways that the great thing about Vilespine Slayer for Rogue is just the fact that this card can get bounced. You can shadow step this thing. For players that understand some of the cool synergies you can play with Rogue that can really utilize this thing, can get even more out of it than you just get out of it by having it. But Twin Tyrant was just... I'm going to be voting Twin Tyrant mostly because the meta impact was just so much more immense in general. It did so much more to make people quit Hearthstone, such as myself, for a while. I mean, it was like the meta impact was just way higher. I would say you can make an argument about the power level for the time period to some degree, but I don't think you can make an argument for the meta impact. And that's just where I'm sitting with it.
I remember waiting for a friend at a bar to watch a basketball game, and I got Twin Tyranted on a turn where I was forced to play in it if I had any chance to win. And I ordered 2 shots right afterwards. And then I put down Hearthstone, and I didn't pick it up for a week. So I think from that experience, I choose Twin Tyrant as well.
Yeah, this is what we're talking about where the experience matters. And, this was 50-50. I got to give people props that they gave recognition. Because, again, we know there's some recency bias in some stuff. So the fact that some people voted for Vilespine, I think is fair. I don't think it's a slam dunk. I don't think we should be shitting on Vilespine Slayer. It's not like that kind of pick, but it definitely, I don't think it stands up. All right, so next we've got, this one's really fun. All right, Cycle of Hatred versus Potion of Madness. So, 2 different tales, really. Potion of Madness being a card that, there's another card we talked about, I can't think of it, but basically, this is it was Mind Control Tech. I was talking about Mind Control Tech in Merps' chat, and Mind Control Tech affected games where neither player had it in their deck. That's the kind of impact it had. And Potion of Madness is sort of similar. That's why I got to that point. So Potion of Madness would affect games when you didn't even realize it was affecting the game, because you can't always see what your opponent has. But your opponent might have to play around it because it's like, well, I have a loot hoarder and I have a 2/2, right? And it's like, if I give them the card draw and if they get the death rattle and they clear my board, like, I lose. So like, So they would play around it, but by playing around it, they lost all their tempo, and then like they lose. So cards like that are really important.
Yes.
You know, that's why I picked it over Defile as much as I think Defile probably deserved to be into the finals, but or not finals, but into deeper into the games. You know, so.
Yeah.
And then on the other side, Cycle of Hatred is a late game card that is basically one of the craziest board flips like ever in Hearthstone.
It literally does what every board flip is supposed to do. It clears the board and gives you a board. It does exactly what a board flip does. There's no other card quite like it. Maybe Abyssal Enforcer, and that's not on the same power level. Oh, well, it's on the same power level. That's not what I mean. Yeah. But it's there's just not any cards that do it like that. And, you know, it's funny that it will be going up against Twin Tyrant if it wins this round, because that's another card that's one of the other few cards that's kind of like it.
Kellen, don't reveal my intentions with this stuff. Sometimes my votes are...
Oh, intentions. Yeah, okay.
Because I'm going for Cycle. I'm definitely...
You're voting for Cycle? Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I'm voting for Potion. Potion affected how we thought about Hearthstone, how we did everything. I don't think I drafted a Loot Hoarder for like 3 months. I think like I don't remember playing a Stubborn Gastropod into a 3-drop for like a year. Like I feel like Potion had Potion mentally damaged me. I made wrong plays all the time because of a stupid Potion of Madness. Where Cycle of Hatred, it was like they either got it or they don't. And maybe I'm overvaluing the mental anguish that I experienced from Potion of Madness, but Cycle of Hatred felt like I couldn't do anything about it, and Potion of Madness felt like I had to warp my entire planet.
I'm struggling, Kellen. Where I'm struggling is that Cycle of Hatred is literally. I mean, they both are kind of swings. Obviously, one is a kind of a tempo way earlier. Well, usually earlier game swing. It can obviously happen later, but Cycle is like literally one of the crazy. It would be one thing if it just summoned 1/1s for everything it killed. That would still be really good. But it summons 3/3, so like you can clear a board and literally put 18 power on the board, and it's not even that crazy for that to happen often. So where I'm struggling is that its power level is just so high, you know, that
I think part of where I'm at too is Cycle of Hatred was only available to one class, and Potion of Madness became available to a lot more classes through Cabal Chemist and Courier. So it ended up being a more frequently seen card, and it was seen all the time. You saw Potion of Madness constantly. If your opponent was Priest, it was super likely they had it because there wasn't much you took over it. I do understand that Cycle of Hatred at 7 mana has a bigger impact in the game, but Potion of Madness costs 1/7 of that amount of mana.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm going with Cycle.
Okay. What do the people say?
The people say they say Cycle.
Dang it, I have not won. The people and I disagree. There's people and I disagree. 3 times. All 3 times the people have sided with him.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to say I'm pretty excited about that discussion. Twin Tyrant versus Cycle. That's going to be fun.
That's gonna be
so as a consolation prize, we get to have that discussion. So that's going to be kind of cool. Because I don't know if Twin Tyrant, if Potion would be able to beat it. But we'll see. Okay, moving on. This was an experimental thing I threw in at the last minute. I threw the group of lackeys. I think this is where they get the axe. I mean, Kellen might disagree with me here, but I don't think he will. But Hysteria is just like the dumbest. Like,
wait, the matchup is lackeys versus Hysteria, by the way. And
yes. Sorry. Yes.
I'm with you, man. I think Hysteria takes it. Lackeys, the concept of lackeys was very powerful, but all of the implementation outside of Miscreant was pretty balanced. Evil Genius was a little beyond what it should have been. But like Miscreant was the only one that was really easily, obviously overpowered. The others were good, but only really worked amazingly well if they hit like.
I would argue that Evil Genius was pretty not on the level of Miscreant, but very close. No.
That's where I'm at too. Yeah, I think it was.
Maybe close is the wrong word, but it's very, very, very good.
Yeah. I thought Sinister Deal was actually one of the better lackey cards, which is funny. But man, I gotta say, Hysteria is the one I'd go with. I mean, I know that many of the reasons it changed were constructed, but I just remember so many times where I would cast Hysteria and be like, oh, I didn't even know it worked like that. And then I'd be left with a 3/6 and my opponent would have no cards to play. And it was just like, there were so many times where I'd be like, oh, I'll spend 3 mana and it's a straight up board clear. Cool, I guess I'll do that. And that kind of stuff just kept happening with Hysteria. So yeah, I don't think that one's pretty close.
Yeah, it's interesting because I felt a lot more anxiety after the first round because it was just so much like, I don't know. There's so many to go through. Part of it was getting tired from going through so many cards, but at the same time, now now it's like a lot of these matchups coming up look really interesting. So I'm really excited about the top 16. So this will be really cool. All right, this is our last matchup of round 2. We have Giggling Inventor, which would be in this. It's actually been 5, 7, and 6 mana, but we're doing 5 mana when it was like just completely. It was really meta warping, like. And it was, man, if you develop like some tempo, like minions that were high attack and then threw this thing down, and some classes can kind of get through some of this stuff. And remember, Rush wasn't quite as relevant yet. So there was starting to be some Rush, but not as much. So this thing was really good. And then, of course, we have Scream, which by far...
Scream. That's the card we're matching up against.
Yeah. Sorry, so I did it again. Yeah, Psychic Scream is just like... Okay. Psychic Scream is just... It meta warping in another way. I mean, it impacted basically Hearthstone Arena became 4-hour games for the next like 5 months because of Psychic Scream. It was crazy.
I think one of my least favorite experiences playing with Psychic Scream was anytime I played against a Warlock where my whole plan was to wait them out because I was playing Priest, and so that was an era where Priest had so much control that you could just sit. Your plan against Warlock was literally just to wait them out until they ran out of all the cards in their deck and had nothing left. Mm-hmm. And in the past, before that, Warlock would win the game by just tapping you out. They would just draw more cards and continue playing threats, and you would eventually lose. But there was so much AoE removal and so much good, Shadow Madness and all this other stuff at the time that you could literally kill all of their cards and still have 10 cards left in your deck. Psychic Scream, that was when Psychic Scream was both good and bad because it allowed you to clear boards that were uncomfortable, but it was very frustrating to have to put like 4 Hooked Reavers back in their deck or something silly.
Yeah, for sure.
I am still voting Giggling Inventor between the existence of Magnetic and just the strength of the card on its own and how I just remember playing against Giggling Inventor and just not knowing what to do. Just when they cast it on turn 5, not knowing what the heck I was supposed to do. Was I supposed to trade off the Divine Shields on both minions? Was I supposed to double trade into one of them so I had less damage on the board? Was I supposed to waste my ping on the 2/1 so they had less damage, or should I use it on the Divine Shield? They presented you with so many decisions and you did not know which one was the right one because each decision had so many punish points. I don't know. I'm voting for Inventor because of its incredible power level in every single class and its ubiquity in all decks where it was available to be drafted. But Psychic Scream, man, it has a special place in my heart for things I'm most scared of on turn 7. Where do you land after you were a big fan of both cards? Where do you land in the end?
Oh man, I don't know. It's like, so if we go through the list, power level, I mean, maybe Giggling Inventor for power level at the time is a little bit less than Scream, but meta impact, I would argue that at 5 mana, Giggling Inventor was probably a much higher meta impact. Well, gosh, they both have a high meta impact. It's tough. I actually am rarely.
I thought Inventor had both a higher meta impact and a higher power level in its era.
Yeah.
Than Psychic Scream did. And don't get me wrong, Psychic Scream was incredibly important, but I felt like Giggling Inventor at its initial printing was a card that we just never seen anything that produced a 5 mana 4/5 that had double Divine Shields and 2 separate taunts. I felt like there was that power, that amount of split power was so huge. That's where I'm at. I don't know. Where are you at? You got to make a decision. It's our last one of the day. This is our final choice before the round of 16. What are you going to choose?
I don't know, man. I can't. This one's really hard.
You just looked at what the votes were, didn't you?
I did because I'm trying to figure out what. I'm gonna scam it. I'm just kidding. I did look though. I'm curious. I was very curious. I don't know if I want to tell you what they voted.
I don't care. I voted already. I'm good. I'm on Giggling Inventor.
I'm gonna vote. I'm gonna vote for Giggling because I want to hear what ADWCTA says about it.
What the people say now that we voted? They said Scream.
They did say Scream. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like this one. I think this is a juicy pick. I like it.
I like Giggling. I don't think it's that. I actually don't think it's.
I definitely think there are people that are going to think that this is way farther apart than it is. Yeah. I think based on what we were saying that I'm a little closer than you are, but I don't think that I'm a little closer than you, but I don't think it's that far. So it's a really interesting debate. So that does it for the second round. We'll go through a quick Abyssal Forcer beat Puzzle Box. We had Silver Sword beat Norsy Kraken. Arbor Up beat Ultimate Infestation. We had Firelands Portal take out Muster for Battle. Primordial Drake took out the Og Merchants. Sword Eater took out Outriders Axe. Coilfang took out Stonehill Defender. Faceless Corruptors moving on against Fiery Warax. Then we had Conjurers versus Expendables, and Conjurers moved on. Scorpid took out Fire Plume Phoenix. Merps will be happy. Then we had Keeper of Aldemon versus imprisoned violfine, and Keeper moved on. Troublemaker versus Ganarg. Troublemaker moved on. Twin Tyrant took out Vilespine Slayer. Cycle of Hatred took out Potion of Madness. Hysteria took out Lackeys, and Giggling Inventor took out Psychic. So that's it. We got through the whole list, and now we are ready for Saturday, 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific. We have ADWCTA and Merps from the Grinning Goat / the Lightforge podcast joining us, and we also have Dreads, who I just beat right before this podcast. Anyway, I'm just kidding. But yes.
You're not kidding. That's true.
That is true. That is true. I beat Scream, so that's why it doesn't move on. So yeah, this will be really fun. I'm really excited. And that's going to do it. That's going to do it for the 22nd episode of the Calcast. You can join us live. Normally, except for this coming week when we're doing it at 5 p.m. Eastern, normally it's 8 p.m. Eastern on Saturdays on my Twitch channel, or you can download the podcast wherever you get them every Monday. You can also find me on Twitch where I stream 7 a.m. Eastern, or you can go to YouTube or Twitter by searching Keludar. That's Keludar. And like I already told you about next week. Well, this coming week, we're going to have Saturday, 5 p.m. We're going to have our whole panel. There will be no ifs, ands, or buts. There will be a majority vote because we have an odd amount, which was on purpose. So that's going to be really fun. The discussion will be crazy. And if you think that's probably going to be at least 3 hours. I don't know exactly, but with the people we have coming on, this, even though it's not nearly as many picks, it's going to take a while. So get ready.
It's as many as we did today. It's almost the same number. So we're going to be.
Yeah, it's going to
be a big one.
Yeah, but it'll be really fun. And also remember, we're going to give a thanks to John Laux for the music used in the episode. You can find a link to all our contributors in the show notes. Remember, you can find a link to the tournament bracket below if you also want to use that as you're listening. This has been the Calcast. We'll see you on Saturday. All right.
Cal.
Okay, what's up?
How could they disagree with me every time? How could the people not have my back? How could I be wrong on what the people wanted 3 times?
Yeah, what have you been teaching them, Coach Callan?
Apparently nothing. Apparently I've taught them nothing. Or maybe I'm the one who needs to learn. But I'm not willing to entertain that thought. I have taught them nothing, and I don't deserve my title of coach. It's really disappointing. I'm so sad.
Are you bleeping mad?
No, I'm just bleeping sad.
I'm bleeping sad. Don't be sad. Get mad.
What? Get mad? What? Okay. I'm going to go get angry. I'm going to go yell at my computer until Arbor Up loses to Ultimate Infestation.
I'm really fucking mad. He didn't yell. It's okay, though. He's sad. I'll let him have it. I had to get one bleep in. He's sad.
I can't believe I lost to the people 3 times. It's so sad to me. I really thought I was on the right page. Stonehill Defender lost to coilfang warlord. I just don't even know. I'm so surprised.
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna go cry. I'll talk to you later.
Okay.
Bye, Kel.
See ya. Bye.